I want you to imagine, just for a second, a thermostat in your house that is so unbelievably sensitive, like so demanding, that if it's off by even half a degree, the entire house just completely shuts down.
Oh, yeah, like a total catastrophic failure.
Right. The power cuts, the pipes instantly freeze, the whole system just, grinds to an absolute halt. You can't just throw on a sweater and wait it out. It is a structural collapse.
It basically becomes an existential threat to the house itself. The walls would practically start coming down.
Exactly. And the wild part is that fragile, high-stakes scenario is, that's the everyday reality of your own body when it comes to internal chemical balance.
Yeah, it really is. It's wild to think about.
So today's deep dive is taking us straight into this huge stack of physiology and chemistry notes, all about pH, acids, and bases. And our mission here is to really demystify what pH actually means, how our bodies guard it like this priceless treasure, and why walking this invisible chemical tightrope is literally the difference between life and death.
Because the biological systems running inside you right now are just phenomenal. Every second of every day, without you ever thinking about it, your body is executing these incredibly complex chemical equations.
Just to keep you from falling off that tightrope?
Exactly, just to keep you alive.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to truly understand how the body guards its pH, we kind of have to grasp what pH is in the first place.
Right. Which is quite the story in itself.
It is. Looking through these sources, I was completely blindsided by the origin story here. I fully expected this scale to come from, I don't know, a sterile, high-tech medical lab somewhere. But the answer actually starts with beer.
It does. Specifically, the Carlsberg Laboratory in Denmark back in 1909.
Which is just amazing to me.
Yeah, there was this Danish biochemist named Søren Peter Lauritz Sørensen. He was serving as the director of chemistry for the brewery. So, he wasn't a doctor and he wasn't studying human biology at all.
He was just a beer guy.
Basically.
Yeah.
He was simply trying to optimize the brewing process.
Because, if I'm understanding the notes right, making beer relies on fermentation. And fermentation is driven by enzymes.
You hit the nail on the head.
And if the liquid environment isn't perfectly tuned, those enzymes just stop working, the yeast dies, and you ruin, thousands of gallons of beer.
Right, which is a very expensive mistake. So to keep those enzymes happy, Sørensen had to track the concentration of hydrogen ions that were floating around in the brewing vats.
Okay.
But the problem was the math. The raw numbers he had to use to measure these hydrogen ions were incredibly unwieldy. We are talking about concentrations like 0.00000001 moles per liter.
Which means absolutely nothing to most of us. A mole per liter is basically just a chemist's way of doing a head count of specific atoms in a given volume of liquid, right?
Yeah.
It's like trying to count a few specific grains of sand dissolved inside a massive swimming pool.
That is a great way to visualize it, honestly. And writing out those microscopic fractions every time someone tested a vat was just tedious, and it was super prone to error.
Oh, I bet. Missing 1 0 ruins the whole batch.
Exactly. So Sørensen invented a shorthand. He introduced pH. And most historians point to the P standing for the German word potence, or maybe the French puissance, but they both basically mean power.
The power of hydrogen?
Yep, the H stands for hydrogen. It was this neat logarithmic notation designed to turn all those microscopic fractions into just simple whole numbers.
I love that a tool invented literally just to save a batch of Danish beer became one of the most foundational metrics of applied science.
It's a great piece of history.
But that word you just used, logarithmic, I feel like that changes everything about how we need to picture this scale.
It really does. It's crucial.
Because it means pH doesn't work like a speedometer on a car, right? Where going from 10 miles an hour to 20 means you're just going twice as fast. It's more like the Richter scale for earthquakes.
Exactly. A shift of a single whole number on the pH scale represents a tenfold increase or decrease in hydrogen ions.
Tenfold. So if you drop from a neutral pH 7 down to a pH 6, the liquid isn't just slightly more acidic. It is 10 times as acidic.
Right.
And dropping from 7 to 5 means it's 100 times more acidic. And a shift to a pH of 4 means it is 1,000 times more acidic.
And that exponential math, that right there, is the core reason that internal thermostat in your body has to be so heavily guarded.
Because a tiny shift is actually huge.
Exactly. A tiny numerical shift on a piece of paper translates to this massive chemical landslide inside your veins.
Wow. So if the pH scale is essentially a head count of hydrogen ions, I guess we have to look at where those ions are coming from in the first place.
Right, which brings us to acids and bases.
Yeah, and I grew up thinking of these as fixed permanent identities.
Yeah.
A lemon is an acid. Bleach is a base. End of story. But the sources show that as chemistry advanced, that rigid definition kind of just fell apart completely.
It did. The classic definition from the 1880s, the Arrhenius definition, it said that an acid increases hydrogen ions in water and a base increases hydroxide ions.
Okay, sounds simple enough.
And that held up fine, if you were only mixing things in water. But once scientists started observing reactions in gases or other solvents, the old rules just couldn't explain the results.
Like, the chemistry was clearly happening right in front of them, but the old definition couldn't account for it at all.
Right. So in 1923, two scientists, Johannes Brønsted and Thomas Lowry, they independently proposed a much broader framework.
The Brønsted-Lowry definition.
Exactly, which is what modern physiology actually relies on today. They realized an acid is simply any substance that donates a proton, which is just a hydrogen ion, and a base is any substance that accepts one.
So it's basically a microscopic game of hot potato.
That's a perfect analogy.
The acid is whatever molecule currently throws the potato, and the base is whatever molecule catches it.
Yep.
So they aren't permanent identities at all. They are transient roles that molecules play, depending entirely on who they're interacting with at that moment.
What's fascinating here is how it completely redefines water. We drink it every day, but chemically, water can act as an acid or a base.
Wait, really? Both?
Yeah. If water encounters a molecule that's eager to throw a proton, water will catch it, acting as a base. But if it encounters a molecule that wants to catch, water will throw one of its own protons, acting as an acid.
So it can play both sides of the field.
Exactly.
And that specific ability to role play, to pass that proton hot potato back and forth, that's the underlying mechanism for how our body defends our internal chemistry.
Which brings us right to buffering.
Yes. And looking at the survival window for human blood in these notes, it is genuinely startling. Normal blood pH sits in this astonishingly tight range, between 7.35 and 7.45.
You basically have a margin of error of 1/10 of a point.
That's nothing. Compare that to the rest of the body. Like gastric juice in your stomach regularly drops to a highly acidic pH of 1.5.
Right, to digest food.
And your pancreas secretes digestive fluids around a basic pH of 8. The digestive tract swings wildly across the scale and handles it perfectly. But if your blood pH drops below 6.8 or climbs above 7.8, it is lethal.
Yeah, the cellular proteins and enzymes actually unravel. They denature, they lose their physical shape, and your biological engine just seizes up.
The pipes freeze, the house shuts down.
Exactly.
But I have to admit, something about that normal 7.35 to 7.45 range always bothered me a little bit.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, blood is predominantly water, right? And we are always taught that pure water sits at a perfectly neutral pH of 7.0. So logically, wouldn't human biology just default to a neutral 7.0?
It is a incredibly pervasive misconception that 7.0 is the biological ideal. But human blood is actually mildly basic or alkaline. It leans away from acid. Biology doesn't want to be neutral. It actively wants to be around 7.4. And furthermore, the idea that 7.0 is this universal fixed anchor for neutrality is just chemically flawed anyway.
Wait, it is?
Yeah. Pure water is only neutral pH 7 at a very specific temperature, 25 degrees Celsius. If the temperature of the water changes, the neutral point naturally shifts along with it.
Oh, wow. So we really have to throw out the idea of 7.0 as some magical universal target.
Completely. The body wants 7.4, and it uses molecular sponges called buffers to keep it there.
These are the molecules that catch or throw that proton hot potato to smooth out any spikes or crashes in hydrogen.
Right. And the heavy lifter in human biology is the bicarbonate buffer system. It is just a masterpiece of chemical engineering.
How does it work exactly?
Well, it's a reversible reaction involving carbon dioxide and water, which combine to form carbonic acid. Then that carbonic acid can split into a hydrogen ion and bicarbonate, and it just flows backward and forward constantly.
So it's always shifting to balance things out.
Exactly. There's actually a famous formula called the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation that models this exact relationship. It maps out how the body balances the acid and the base components to lock in that 7.4 pH.
The sources emphasize a really critical reason why this system succeeds where others fail.
Yeah.
It is an open system.
Yes, that's key.
Because if you put a chemical sponge in a sealed test tube, it eventually gets saturated, right? It soaks up all the acid it can hold, and then the pH just crashes anyway.
Right. A closed system has a hard limit. Your body avoids that limit because it can vent the pressure out of both sides of the chemical equation.
Through the lungs and the kidneys.
Exactly. The lungs act as your fast responders. They operate in a matter of minutes. If your blood chemistry starts drifting too acidic, your respiratory rate just naturally increases.
You breathe faster and deeper, blowing off carbon dioxide.
Right. And because carbon dioxide is a core ingredient in that acid-creating equation we talked about, physically venting it out of the body pulls the chemical balance back toward the alkaline side.
You are literally exhaling the acid potential before it can build up. It's like opening a chimney to vent the smoke so the house doesn't suffocate.
That's a perfect way to picture it. And then you have the slow responders, the kidneys.
Right.
They operate over hours or even days. The kidneys act like this microscopic chemical sorting facility. As they filter your blood, they're constantly looking at the bicarbonate levels.
Okay, the base side of the equation.
Yeah. If the blood is too acidic, they pull bicarbonate out of the waste fluid and put it back into the bloodstream to act as a base and catch those excess protons. But if the blood is too basic, they dump the excess bicarbonate into your urine to be eliminated.
So the lungs handle the minute-to-minute emergencies by opening the chimney, and the kidneys slowly rebuild the furnace itself to ensure long-term stability.
They work in perfect tandem. It's amazing.
So we know how the lungs and kidneys manage everyday wear and tear. But what happens when the whole system is just suddenly flooded with acid? When the body is pushed past its breaking point?
That's when things get really dangerous.
The sources give us a really profound example with diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA.
Yeah, DKA is a severe life-threatening complication primarily seen in type 1 diabetes. It occurs when insulin is practically non-existent in the body.
And without insulin, your cells cannot absorb glucose.
Right. They are effectively starving while surrounded by food. So out of sheer desperation, the body starts breaking down stored fat at a massive rate to generate alternative fuel.
And the byproduct of burning all that fat are molecules called ketone bodies.
The critical detail here is that these ketone bodies are highly acidic. Suddenly, the body is dumping a massive, unyielding load of acid directly into the bloodstream.
The bicarbonate sponges just get completely saturated. The notes show blood pH can plummet down to 7.0 or even lower.
Which is an absolute crisis.
It's an invisible internal crisis. But what completely changed my perspective on this is the visible symptom of that crisis. A patient in DKA will often develop what are called coursework respirations.
Yes.
They start taking these incredibly deep, rapid, labored breaths. And if you saw it, you would assume their lungs were failing or like they were choking on something.
But their lungs are actually the only thing working perfectly in that moment.
Because it's the fast-acting buffer system kicking into overdrive. The body senses that massive metabolic acid flood from the ketones, and the lungs are frantically trying to blow off as much carbon dioxide as physically possible to pull the pH back up.
You are watching the body's compensatory mechanisms fight for survival in real time. It's incredible. Recognizing that specific, desperate breathing pattern is actually a core diagnostic skill drilled into paramedics and triage nurses.
Wow.
It tells them the patient isn't suffocating, their blood is turning acidic.
That is the body fighting an acid flood.
Yeah.
What about the reverse? Like, what if the environment tricks your body into throwing away too much acid?
Like being at a high altitude.
Yeah. You're climbing a mountain, the air thins out, and oxygen levels drop.
Yeah.
Naturally, you start hyperventilating to pull more oxygen into your system.
The trade-off, though, is that by hyperventilating, you are rapidly blowing off carbon dioxide.
You're venting the chimney way too fast.
Yeah.
You lose so much carbon dioxide that your blood pH actually shoots up. You develop respiratory alkalosis. Your blood literally becomes too basic.
And the physical experience of that can be super alarming. You get dizziness, lightheadedness, tingling in the fingers and face.
Oh, man.
And because the lungs caused the problem this time, the slow-acting system has to step in to fix it.
The kidneys.
Yep. Over the next few days on the mountain, your kidneys recognize the alkalosis. They respond by dumping more bicarbonate into your urine, lowering the blood pH back to normal.
This precise kidney adjustment is the chemical mechanism behind what climbers call acclimatization.
Exactly.
But, the hyperventilation aspect brings up an amazing historical quirk in these notes. Because breathing too fast causes the blood to become too basic, this is the exact physiological reason people having panic attacks were historically told to breathe into a paper bag.
Oh, the classic home remedy.
Right. By rebreathing your own exhaled air, you force that lost carbon dioxide back into your lungs and your bloodstream, which pushes the blood pH back down to normal and stops the alkalosis.
Makes sense on paper.
But the notes issue a massive warning here. Modern medicine strictly discourages the paper bag trick today.
It is far too dangerous to guess the underlying cause in the field. I mean, a person hyperventilating might be having a panic attack, sure, but they might also be suffering from a pulmonary embolism or a severe asthma attack.
In those scenarios, they are genuinely starving for oxygen.
Exactly. So placing a paper bag over their mouth deprives them of the one thing they desperately need, which can easily be fatal.
So the paper bag is definitely out. But thinking about oxygen delivery raises this sort of mechanical question for me.
What's that?
Well, the lungs and the kidneys are incredible, obviously, but they are stationary organs. If I'm running a marathon, the deep muscle tissue in my leg is burning energy and producing acid miles away from the lungs, relatively speaking.
Sure.
How does the body buffer the local pH in deep tissue? The answer in the sources is honestly hiding in plain sight. Hemoglobin.
Ah, yes. The protein inside your red blood cells responsible for ferrying oxygen around your circulatory system.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I always pictured hemoglobin as nothing more than a delivery truck for oxygen. But it turns out, molecule for molecule, hemoglobin is one of those vital chemical buffers in human blood.
It really is. Hemoglobin contains a specific amino acid in its structure called histidine. And histidine is just exceptional at playing that hot potato game we talked about.
Okay.
It readily accepts or donates protons based on the surrounding environment. But the true brilliance of hemoglobin isn't just its ability to soak up acid. It is how that buffering action physically controls oxygen delivery. Physiologists call it the Bohr effect.
Walk me through this. How does a delivery truck help balance the pH?
Okay, so picture that hard-working leg muscle during your marathon. It is metabolizing rapidly, right? Producing a localized spike in carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions.
So the tissue itself is becoming acidic. It's generating acid because it's working so hard.
Exactly. Now, the hemoglobin delivery truck floats into that capillary bed carrying a fresh load of oxygen. When the hemoglobin encounters that localized acidic environment, the histidine catches those extra protons to buffer the acid.
Right, playing hot potato.
But capturing a proton fundamentally alters the physical shape of the hemoglobin molecule.
Wait. So if the muscle is making acid and the hemoglobin changes its physical shape when it touches that acid, is the acid literally what shakes the oxygen loose from the truck?
That is exactly what happens. The shape change forces the hemoglobin to drop its oxygen passenger.
That is unbelievable. The acid itself triggers the release of the oxygen precisely in the tissue that is working the hardest.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
pH regulation and oxygen delivery aren't just two systems collaborating. They are the exact same molecular mechanism.
The elegance of that system is just hard to overstate.
It really is. And, understanding how flawlessly the kidneys, the lungs, and the hemoglobin operate, it makes it incredibly jarring to see how easily this science gets manipulated in the real world.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources spend significant time dismantling a very prominent myth: the alkaline diet.
Right. The premise of the alkaline diet is that consuming specific foods, pounds of kale, alkaline lemon water, avoiding meat, can intentionally raise your blood pH, making your body more alkaline.
And they claim this supposedly cures chronic disease, boosts energy, or even prevents cancer.
Yeah.
So from a pure physiology standpoint, based on everything we just discussed, is it actually possible for a healthy person to eat their way to a different blood pH?
It is essentially impossible. Your physiological buffering systems are far too powerful for that. The lungs and the kidneys are so ridiculously efficient at maintaining that 7.4 set point that dietary changes cannot measurably alter your blood pH.
Wow.
You could eat a literal mountain of alkaline foods, and your blood chemistry wouldn't budge.
But the proponents of these diets often use pH test strips to prove their point, right? They tell you to test your urine, the strip changes color, and they claim it proves your entire body is becoming alkaline. And it is a factual statement that an alkaline diet will change the pH of your urine.
It will, but changing your urine pH is not evidence that your blood chemistry shifted. It is evidence of the exact opposite.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It proves your kidneys are working perfectly. Your body absorbed the alkaline base from the food, realized it didn't need it to maintain the 7.4 blood thermostat, and immediately dumped all that excess base into the bladder to be excreted.
So you aren't alkalizing your cellular chemistry at all. You are just paying a premium to create highly alkaline urine.
Precisely. The only scenario where diet significantly impacts your acid-base balance is in a severe disease state, like advanced renal failure.
Right.
If the kidneys are failing, they can no longer sort and excrete the excess, but that is a critical medical emergency requiring dialysis, not a wellness detox for a healthy individual.
We have to impartially report the findings in the sources here, and they detail how this specific misinformation has
Yeah.
led to some pretty devastating real-world consequences. In 2018, there was a massive class action lawsuit resulting in a $14 million settlement against the promoters of the PH Miracle Diet books because their claims regarding cancer treatment were deemed fraudulent.
Yeah, and there was also a really tragic, highly publicized case where a breast cancer patient chose to follow an alkaline regimen instead of pursuing conventional medical treatment, resulting in her death.
That's awful.
A jury ultimately awarded over $105 million in a related civil case that same year.
They took a legitimate, beautifully complex physiological concept, pH buffering, and twisted it into an unfounded claim that actively caused harm. And it seems to play on this fundamental misunderstanding, the assumption that acids are inherently toxic and bases are inherently soothing or safe.
Which is so wrong. In biochemistry, both extremes are equally dangerous. It is deviation from the 7.4 set point that causes the damage.
Right.
Alkalosis, having blood that is too basic, can trigger severe muscle spasms, confusion, seizures, and deadly heart arrhythmias just as easily as acidosis can. You do not want to be alkaline. You want to be balanced.
So what does this all mean? It brings us right back to the incredible tightrope walk happening inside us every single second. The big takeaways for you listening. pH is logarithmic, meaning a small shift on the scale is a massive chemical event.
Right.
Human blood is not perfectly neutral. It is mildly basic, guarded fiercely between 7.35 and 7.45.
And your body defends that narrow window using fast-acting lungs that vent the chimney and slow-acting kidneys that recalibrate the furnace.
Acids and bases aren't fixed identities. They are transient chemical roles, passing protons back and forth in a microscopic game of hot potato. And if those systems are healthy, no amount of lemon water is going to override them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, before we wrap up, there is a macro connection in these sources that completely reframes everything we've talked about.
Ooh, what is it?
The exact same carbonic acid chemistry, those equilibria that Sorensen and Henderson mapped out over a century ago, the system keeping your internal blood stable, is currently playing out on a planetary scale.
Wait, what do you mean? On a planetary scale?
The Earth's oceans are absorbing massive amounts of atmospheric carbon dioxide right now, and when that carbon dioxide hits the water, it triggers the exact same chemical mechanism, the exact same carbonic acid equations happening inside your veins.
Oh, wow.
And because of that massive influx of CO2, the ocean's pH is slowly lowering. The oceans are becoming more acidic.
The same equation governing a single red blood cell in my leg is altering the chemistry of the entire global ocean.
Exactly.
That is a heavy, awe-inspiring thought to sit with. Our internal biological thermostat really is a microscopic mirror of the world around us.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the science of your own bodies, and remember just how beautifully balanced you actually are. We'll see you next time.